we're back. First time we're recording. The start of episode 2 of Yeah For Real. I am host Isaac, and I'm joined by my friend
Varun.
Oh, Varun, it is lovely to. We've been waiting like a week for this one.
Yeah, I know. Scheduling conflicts. Idea conflicts.
Idea conflicts. There was so much we want to talk about because Varun and I both have a lot of opinions about a lot of things.
Yeah. It was honestly kind of hard to. It was hard to pick like one that was not boring. That was not that we both knew enough about, especially.
Yeah, but you've come, I understand, to this episode with an idea in mind.
Yeah, honestly, I was thinking to myself, what do I know the most about? Out of everything. Out of, F1, tennis, sharks, no.
Oh, Sharks is
up
there. I'm honestly
there.
surprised we're not talking about Sharks.
Sharks are up there, and that, it came to mind, but it's Lord of the Rings. I have read every single book that Tolkien and Christopher Tolkien, his son, has ever published. I've read some of his letters, not all of them. It's hard, but I would say definitively that I know everything there is to know.
Yeah.
About Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. I can firmly say I know no one else who knows half as much about Lord of the Rings as you probably. And that's sick because as a sort of outside Lord of the Rings gazer, the lore seems just incredible. And so I did totally, this, because he made me watch it. I obviously watched multiple lore videos, and some of them pretty long. I think I watched the one. I think we were in California actually. We watched the part 1, part 2, part 3 videos.
Yeah,
they were fucking sick. They were awesome. They were really cool.
It's really intricate. I mean, I think out of any fantasy world, any fictional world that I've ever seen, there's never been as much world building as there is in Lord of the Rings. Tolkien, I mean, he was a linguist. Went to college for linguistics, so he created 2 languages for the books. Like, he created them. And a lot of the letters that Tolkien has written basically said that he was only interested in writing the Silmarillion. He really didn't care about Lord of the Rings. He really wanted to dive deep into creating
a universe. Is that really
universe.
true?
Yeah.
So the Lord of the Rings were sort of a gateway for him to get to actually what... That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So he was just kind of an all-time dork.
Basically, I mean, he was a World War I vet.
Yeah, so this is the thing that my brother always talks about. Shout out, my brother. Shout out. Is that he was a World War I vet, and so experienced the, long journey. And that's why there's, so much traveling in Lord of the Rings. I can't think of an action... It's like an action series.
Yeah, I would say.
Fantasy. I can't think of a single other movie like that or where there's so much walking, and it's some of the best parts of the entire movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's interesting because every single main character, no matter who it is, whether it be Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, or Frodo and Sam and Gollum, or Gandalf, Merry and Pippin, they're always on the move. They obviously they stay a few nights in some places, like we saw with Rohan or Rivendell, you know what I mean. And in the books, those stays are a bit longer. But at least in the movies parts, they really they move on a lot, and it is very unique to Lord of the Rings, I would say. Yeah,
and it's just the slow grind of having to get to your destination and all these it makes so much sense when you realize he's a World War I vet, and I think that's why it's so good.
Yeah, another thing that makes it's pretty interesting to think about being a World War I vet is the idea of the Easterlings, being the Ottoman Empire in World War I. Especially,
wait, define Easterlings.
The Easterlings were the race that, in the final movie, The Return of the King, and in the Two Towers, actually, we see the giant Oliphants that are riding.
Okay.
Those are Easterlings, and they came under the service of Sauron because after Sauron lost, in the prequel of Lord of the Rings, we see Galadriel talking about when Isildur cut off the ring and Sauron was vanquished, he fled to the east, where the Easterlings were, and he created kind of a cult following with those Easterlings, and that is why those men serve Sauron.
Oh, and that's actually so cool.
Do really resemble Ottomans.
Do they say that in the movies at any point, the Lord of the Rings movies?
That detail of him fleeing to the east? No. this is all...
And that they're, like, cult following him?
No, this is all in a lot of his letters, as well as the unfinished tales. There's not a lot of writing on these two, but the Blue Wizards. So, as we know, there are 3 wizards that we see throughout Lord of the Rings, which is Gandalf, Sauron,
and the rabbit
and
guy.
Radagast. Radagast the brown, Sauron the white, and Gandalf the gray. And there are 2 blue wizards, which is, they do say in the Hobbit movies, I'm pretty sure, Gandalf to Bilbo during the first movie. Those wizards we don't really know a lot about. Tolkien didn't write a lot about them, but it is rumored that they went into the East in order to try to minimize Sauron's influence on the Easterling people, and it is said that because of them, that Sauron wasn't able to raise as many Easterlings as he could have.
Interesting, but they're not mentioned in the movies.
They're
Except
not
maybe
mentioned.
In the... Okay.
They're not mentioned in the books, really. The Lord of the Rings books, in the Hobbit books. They're not mentioned in the movies. They are only mentioned in very few separate times.
Okay. So, I understand that the white wizard is sort of like head honcho wizard. Do the other colors have any sort of significance?
No. I mean, as you know, white kind of is like the powerful,
almost like the angelic, like,
just because as we see with Gandalf, when he came back as Gandalf the White, he was much stronger than when he was Gandalf the Gray. So the other colors don't symbolize anything to my knowledge. It's not a ranking system. They were basically all equals except for Sauron, who is the head.
Right. Okay.
Everyone else is kind of, they were all equals, especially because they were all of the same race. They were all Astari. They're all Maiar.
Right. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's so... I just watched The Two Towers, as you know, with Corinne. Shout out Corinne. And the Easterlings show up in it. Like, they're marching. And it, like, I don't know why for me, but it just makes the whole difference, actually. Like learning that about them. Because it's obviously cooler when, like, you understand the context behind, like, why is this army fighting for Sauron? Like, in the movie, they're just like, oh, those are the Easterlings, I guess. Like, they fight for Sauron. And it's like, okay, cool. But it's sick, because they spend so much time explaining the Uruk-hai. Like, it's not like the Uruk-hai show up, there's, like, 20 minutes of, like, building the Uruk-hai, like, plantation center or whatever. Like,
I mean, the movies don't do a great job of showing, and neither do the books, really. I mean, the Lord of the Rings books, the 3 books specifically, they don't really tell a lot about the Easterlings. But I do think the scene in the Two Towers is very important, because one, and especially they see them again in by the Black Gate later on. It's that when they appear in the Return of the King, like, you always knew they were there. In the back of your mind, we had seen them marching, we had seen them go into the Black Gate, we see them enter Mordor, we know that Sauron has them. And in the final battle, again, in Battle of Pelennor Fields, when the orcs are besieging Minas Tirith, we're all wondering, in the back of our mind, where are the Easterlings? Where are the giant elephants we see? And when they come in, it really is like it hits you hard, because we just saw Rohan destroy the orcs. And then you remember, oh, how did I forget that entire other army that Sauron has is now appearing? And I think that makes the moment, like, so much better, seeing that and having us almost forget about them until they come up.
There's no other series where I just, like, I would take more minutes. Like, I'd take more minutes of time. Like, they're so obviously, as any cultured man would, I enjoy the extended editions.
Yeah, there's no other way to watch them.
But, like, I'd watch, if they existed, I'd watch the extended editions.
They're already 4 hours long, but honestly, they could have used another hour to explain everything. Just, that's how dense Lord of the Rings is. And I don't know, they're one of the few movies that just, like, I feel like I never get tired of watching.
Yeah. So, speaking of movies I get tired of watching, I want to talk about The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my own opinions about this, which I'll get to, but as a avid Lord of the Rings enjoyer, can you explain why, as a trilogy, The Hobbit, in your mind, is just, like, clearly not as good?
Yeah.
And I kind of think the Hobbits are fun.
So I like the Hobbits. I specifically like the Desolation of Smaug, which is the second movie.
Yeah, that's the best one.
That is the best one. I think they do a lot of good things. Martin Freeman being cast as Bilbo was one of the best things they've ever done.
He's great.
But they overuse CGI in the movie, and you can very tell. Even though I've seen the behind the scenes and they film a lot of it outside, they still somehow each shot has the CGI feel to it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it look real, and that's especially apparent in the Battle of Five Armies.
Oh my
God. What made the Lord of the Rings so cool was they literally went to New Zealand for like a year or two and just filmed. They did use CGI obviously, but it's tasteful. It's tasteful. They don't use it a lot. Like the armies, for example, in Lord of the Rings, they still had 300 to 400 people there,
like in
front, costume in the front,
right? Yeah.
And they would have a blue screen behind them, and then they can just kind of duplicate them.
Yeah.
But they still had real elements there.
Yeah.
In The Hobbit, the entire elf army was just clearly CGI.
I mean, it's kind of unbelievable what kind of difference it makes. Like, I'm thinking about Star Wars, like the prequels. Like, look, I think the prequels are fun in the same way that the Hobbits are, but like the CGI is like killing. And the practicality of Star Wars is awesome. Like, same thing with Lord of the Rings. It's the sets too. I've seen pictures of like Rivendell. Like, I've seen Helm's Deep. Like, that's just that. It's the whole.
They
difference.
used a lot of miniatures. In Helm's Deep, they had 3 different miniatures. They had the largest one being a quarter size of the actual thing.
I remember that.
And then and you can tell when they're using which. If there's a zoomed out shot, they're gonna use their miniature that's only 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
When it's a close-up shot, they're going to use their massive miniature. And medium shot, they'll use their medium height miniature. They just really... I don't, think I've ever seen a movie take so much time. Like, they didn't rush anything. They spared no expense. They got the best people to do the best work that they could. And it really shows in the movie. In the movies. In The Hobbit, another thing that I think people don't like about The Hobbit is that they changed it from the books, and people will very clearly see that.
So what are the big changes?
The big changes are Legolas isn't a character in The Hobbit, and that is due to the fact that Tolkien wrote The Hobbit before he wrote Lord of the Rings. So, if he wrote The Lord of the Rings before, and then he wrote The Hobbit after, Legolas definitely would have been there, because Mirkwood, the home of the woodland elves, where they get captured in the second movie or in the middle of the book, that is where Legolas lives. He is the prince there. His dad is Thranduil, so he definitely would have been there. He's always, and this also kind of connects. They connected, the entire thing of Gandalf going to Mirkwood and banishing out Sauron from Dol Guldur with Galadriel, Elrond, and Saruman. That is a real event that took place around the same time as The Hobbit, but that's never even mentioned in The Hobbit. Again, it's one of those things that if Tolkien had written The Hobbit later, he probably would have added into the story. It just kind of happened to be that he wrote The Hobbit as a kid's novel, and people loved it so much, and he started writing the rest of the universe after that. The Hobbit movies are kind of what Tolkien envisioned The Hobbit to be like after he wrote everything else, but he never had time, and since he never had time, we don't have the story, and I think Peter Jackson took a bit...
So it's like Game of Thrones Season 8 vibes.
Yeah, but not as badly done.
No.
Because they still follow the general story, as well as Azog the Defiler, in the main bad guy in the entire movie, is not in the books. He's not a character. He dies.
Also, in the books, isn't it? It's goblins, not.
It's goblins, but again, that's because he hadn't written Lord of the Rings yet. It was still more childish.
Yeah.
Bolg, which was in the movies, if you saw, was Azog's spawn, as they call him. He was the main leader of the orc armies in the books.
Right.
So.
That's interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably. Well, the problem is their CGI works. That's the big.
Yeah.
That's the big first bad thing.
You can tell.
Oh my god, you can tell. But also, that's what made the first 3 movies so but good. It was what you just talked about, the practicality of it all. Like, those orcs are there. They're in that makeup. They are sweating. Like...
those fights, it's with, like, there's nothing that there's no, like... What CGI gets hard is when there's two CGI entities clashing between each other.
Mm-hmm.
In Lord of the Rings, Aragorn was fighting, the Uruk-hai.
Yeah.
Like, that Uruk-hai, nothing was added on. There's no CGI in any of those fights, those one-on-one fights, because...
I think the Bane of the Hobbit is what's even worse, honestly, is when it's one CGI, one real. Like, if it's like a CGI orc fighting Aragorn, it's like obviously not gonna be like.
It's just the lighting. It really, like.
There's no grime on them, like.
They're just too perfect.
Yeah.
It really, and that's very apparent, I think, in the third movie of The Hobbit. It's really bad.
Yeah.
Like,
well, the third movie is based off of, like, I read The Hobbit after I watched the movie. And the Battle of Five Armies is, like, on one page, right? Like, isn't it, like, a paragraph or something? Like...
Let's just say that the Battle of Five Armies was very short in the books. He describes it. He says who fights in it.
Yeah.
But there is nothing that states anything about, the tactics they use. That states nothing about how the battle went for either side.
Yeah.
States nothing about, who was in charge of who, and, the entire moment where Thorin breaks out of his, castle keep and, rallies the dwarves never happened. But I understand why they did that, because if they're making it into more of an adult, story, which Tolkien probably would have done after Lord of the Rings, the battle would have been longer. This is the climax of the movie. They did spend less time with Smaug, which I was kind of disappointed about, because Smaug, I think, was the best part of the movies.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty universally, like, Benedict Cumberbatch, a lot of people have seen the behind-the-scenes footage. So cool to watch. He's so good.
He's
so good.
Incredible.
Yeah. But Smaug is so good. Well, because also another thing my brother will say is that Peter Jackson also, like, because of the limited budget of the first three movies, had to, like, make it work and make it look real, and, like, it's sort of, like, sweet in that way. And the budget is just so big that it's like CGI.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, to give, I will say this. I wouldn't say the Lord of the Rings had a small budget. The Return of the King had a $90 million budget. It wasn't, Yeah,
but The Hobbit probably had, like, what, 200? Like,
200 something. Yeah.
But that's what makes the stuff with Smaug so good, is it's just, like, a one-on-one dialogue scene.
Yeah.
Like, that's what Peter Jackson is so good at. Like, dialogue, and, like, because the dwarves are pretty awesome, I think.
Yeah,
like,
no.
Bilbo's obviously great. Gandalf is Gandalf. Like, it's just, like, oh, dude, is it straight ripped from the book? The dialogue?
Some.
Okay.
They did change it a bit, but definitely they used some lines from the book specifically. I remember, not to do with Smaug, but in the first movie, after they escape from the goblins, right, in the Misty Mountains, and they're about to get chased down by wargs, one of the dwarves says, out of the fire, and then Gandalf finishes, or Thorin finishes, and says, into the frying pan, which is the name of the chapter. Out of the fire and into the frying pan.
That's sweet, actually.
Which is nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so they said that. And the line that Gandalf says to Thorin, when Thorin's about to kill Bilbo, and he says, if you don't like my burglar, please don't harm him, return him safely to me, is directly from the book. Okay. And you can kind of tell. They're like, Tolkien writes dialogue very differently from anyone, like from especially Peter Jackson.
Yeah, it's very Old English.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I again think that's one of the best parts about the Lord of the Rings. That's like, it's so clearly not realistic in terms of like our world, and so you're just like so, for me at least, lost in the sauce.
Fun fact, I will say this, is the backstory of Lord of the Rings that Tolkien gives is that The Hobbit is written by Bilbo Baggins, and The Lord of the Rings is a combination of Frodo and Sam. Sam finishes it, Frodo starts it. and that Tolkien found these books, translated them, and published them. That is the story that he put out. That's the idea of these.
Yeah.
So this is supposed to be our history, the history of the Earth, which is kind of why he got in trouble with the Catholic Church for a bit, because this is like an origin story for the world that is not Christian, that is not the Bible.
Right.
Which I find very interesting. We are, you know how the Lord of the Rings takes place in the Third Age. The movies take place in the Third Age.
Mm-hmm.
The Rings of Power TV show takes place in the Second Age.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting. It's like we're supposed to be in the Fourth Age. This is the Fourth Age.
And how does the Third Age end?
We don't know. That's the thing. We don't know. There's no other thing.
So we don't know the transition between the...
He hasn't written a lot about after the Lord of the Rings. He planned to, but he never ended up doing it.
Okay, so what we see is basically the last thing that happens in the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing to technically happen would be Gimli and Legolas sailing for Valinor.
Do you know if Tolkien was religious?
He definitely... No, yeah, he was Catholic. He was Christian.
Uh-huh.
I'm not entirely sure how religious he was, but he definitely was religious.
That's interesting. Yeah, it says he was a Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
That is interesting that he got in trouble with the church for that, because... Well, it was the church.
It was the church. Yeah, they just didn't like it. They didn't mind Lord of the Rings, but the Silmarillion is just an origin story of our world with different gods.
Like how so?
Okay, so the Silmarillion, the origin of what he says our world is that Eru created a bunch of Ainur, which are these powerful beings. Some will call them gods, some call them angels, doesn't matter, they're just powerful beings. And one of those beings was Sauron. One of those beings was Gandalf. One of those beings was Saruman. So these people, Gandalf, or at least the spirit of Gandalf, who he is, was alive before Middle-earth, the world was created. Okay? They sung the world into creation, but Melkor, or Morgoth, was kind of evil and twisted his own lyrics into the song that created the world, which created some darkness in the world, which is what we see as Shelob, the Kraken that almost gets them before they go into the Mines of Moria.
Oh my gosh.
Those things are what is what Melkor sung into the world, the darkness. And characters like Tom Bombadil are creatures that are sung in was like pure beings.
Okay.
Like genuinely good beings. That is like that's those are the theories. At least that I want to believe. There are other theories, but those are stupid, and you shouldn't listen to them. So that's kind of that's how Tolkien says the world was created.
Okay.
And that the world was originally flat, and one continent surrounded by water, and because the gods fought on it so much that it eventually rounded into the continents we see today.
Oh, is Middle-earth Europe?
Yeah. Yes.
Wait, is Valinor North America?
Valinor, I'm not even sure.
Is it the New World?
No, Valinor is heaven. Think about Valinor as heaven. It's not it's not a reachable place.
Unless you're an elf.
Unless you're an elf, or unless the Valar give permission. Because remember, Bilbo went to Valinor, Frodo went to Valinor, Gimli went to Valinor.
Right.
All of these people are mortal.
Okay, so Middle-earth is actually supposed to be Europe, though. Or
I mean, it's pretty clear. Gondor is England. The knights. The armor looks similar. The elves, I don't think they are. They're not supposed to be. But Rohan is
I was gonna say the French, but
why? Because they surrender. They don't do anything in the Lord of the Rings. They're just there.
They're like fancy.
They're fancy. But I know. I mean, like the Rohan is clearly based on like the Vikings.
Yeah.
So like they definitely drew, and like I said, the Easterlings are the Ottomans, and they're east of what we call Middle Earth.
Okay, but they're also dwarven gods, right?
No.
I thought they I thought when a dwarf dies, he like goes to like the halls of Moria or something like the.
Nope.
No.
So how you want me to tell you how the races were like created?
Yeah.
Okay, so the races that were like the first races were the elves and the dwarves.
Okay.
I mean, actually, they kind of those two races will go first. The dwarves were fashioned out of stone by one of the Valar.
Sick. Okay.
So they kind of like are entombed again. It's kind of like that's their. It's like they still believe in the same gods. Religion is a very interesting thing in Lord of the Rings. Actually, there's not much on the religion of Lord of the Rings, which is very interesting when you think about other fantasy series. And if you think about like there are a lot like for medieval times, religion is such an important factor. In Game of Thrones, you have like pray to the Seven or etc. The old gods and the new gods. But Lord of the Rings, they don't really have any god. Like they don't have any like you don't see the people praying to gods. The Valar are pretty disconnected from Middle Earth.
That is really interesting. So he created. That's never occurred to me. He created a world, like a whole fantasy world without religion, pretty much.
Basically, you don't really you don't see. There's no fights about religion. Elves aren't the elves aren't religious. The Gondor isn't religious. They may have prophecies, but they aren't religious. Maybe because they are living in a world where there are like the main bad guy is a god, and Gandalf is a god, and you can see gods on a daily basis.
Yeah, I guess all of that like weird sci-fi stuff is like real. So it's like there's not much to. That's so interesting.
Not much to pray about. It's just a fact of life that those gods do exist in that world.
That's so interesting. Okay, so I think we should take a break here.
Yes.
All right, sick. All right, so we're back.
We're back.
Who knows how long the break was?
I don't know how long the break was. Do
I
you know, Isaac?
remember. I actually just feel like
it could have been.
There was no break.
Yeah, I feel like it just cut right to this
that
moment.
That was crazy, dude.
That was crazy.
Wow, did you guys see that? This show is magic. You should. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
You should subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Yeah, for real pod.
Yeah.
Spotify.
For real.
Spotify podcast with video. I mean, that is dedication.
Exactly. You don't really see that, except on the really dedicated podcasters.
Exactly. Like we're top. It's like Joe Rogan and then us.
No, Isaac. Us,
Joe Rogan.
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
He can't even live up to us. I mean, what is his setup?
No, dude. I don't want the Roganers after me, man. I love Joe Rogan.
Yeah, no, Joe Rogan. Yeah, I listen to him every day.
Anyways, so we're back, and I think we're like more than halfway done. So I think we should talk about. I think we should have some fun. Like I think we should start with like. All right, I think we should start with like a top 3 Lord of the Rings characters.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
No, because I have to think about it while you're talking.
All right. Okay. Good. So, because I have mine automatically.
You have it ready. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My favorite character in Lord of the Rings is the Witch King of Angmar. If you don't know who that is, you see him in Lord of the Rings. He is the one that with the cool face mask, and he has a mace. And Éowyn kills him.
Yeah.
In the end, after he got backstabbed by Merry. Which I will say, complete cheap shot. They wouldn't have beat him. Yeah. My guy is still undefeated in my eyes in a 1v1. No, but he's a very interesting character that you don't really
Yeah, dude, that was like
about.
Boba Fett dying in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
It's like so bad.
It was sad. It felt like he was so cool. Like we just saw him break Gandalf's staff. Like Gandalf was cowering in fear from him, and then he gets stabbed in the back, and then he's on his knees, and then ran through the face. It just was a unsatisfying end for me. But to each his own. The history of the Witch King of Angmar is that he was a king of men who Sauron gave one of the 9 rings to and corrupted himself. But he was Sauron's left-hand guy. Like, he was the only ring wraith he gave autonomy to. Meaning, all the other ring wraiths were kind of subservient to Sauron, as in they didn't have free will. the Witch King of Angmar was the only servant of Sauron who had its own free will to make battle decisions. Battle decisions. Sauron wasn't leading its armies in Lord of the Rings, so it needed the Witch King to lead it for him. Therefore, he needed to be able to make on-the-fly decisions. Like, Sauron can draw up as much battle plans as he wants, but in the moment, like, remember when Rohan attacked?
Mm-hmm.
Witch King needed to make his own plan. He needed to rethink, how do I counter this? Let's bring in the Easterlings. Could he have,
like, defected if he wanted to?
No.
Was he that? Okay.
No, he cannot. None of the Nazgul can ever defect. Their rings are they always serve Sauron. It's because
of the rings. Okay.
However, if someone else was to utilize the ring's power to its fullest, i.e. Galadriel could do this, Gandalf could have done this, Sauron could have done this, those characters, then the ring race would be subservient to them. Unfortunately, Frodo is not powerful enough to utilize the ring, so that they weren't subservient to him. But if you were able to actually, like, you can dominate them if you use the One Ring.
Whoa. So that's why the One Ring is so powerful. Okay.
Yeah. And it is stated, by the way, that no singular being could beat all 9 of the ring race at once.
I mean, Aragorn...
He took 5.
5 at once.
He took 5 at once, which was... He's the GOAT.
He's the GOAT.
He really is the GOAT, I'll be honest.
Oh god, Aragorn is so sick.
Okay.
I wanted Aragorn's hair for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I decided it wasn't for me.
It only works on some people, and Viggo Mortensen just rocks it.
Okay.
Do you want me to go with my second favorite character? Or do you have your first?
No, I mean, I guess I want to think through it out loud here. Because...
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to say, I know who my favorite. Okay, I was going to say, I don't want to just say, like, Gandalf. Like,
no, you can say Gandalf. Hey, he's cool.
I actually do have a favorite.
Okay.
It's Radagast.
Everyone loves Radagast. Come on, how do you hate Radagast?
Isn't it canon, from what I heard, that he, like, became the way he was because of, like, psychedelics and, like, smoking weed, basically? Like,
which is... Okay, so in the movies, at least, in the Hobbit movies, we can hear when Gandalf is speaking about how he met up with Radagast, and Radagast is saying how Mirkwood is dying. Saruman says his mind has been whittled by excessive consumption of mushrooms.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a bit cuckoo.
That's
because he took a lot of shrooms, which I think is it is hilarious. He's cool. He is one of the wizards. I would say he's the least powerful wizard out of them all.
I mean, what color is he?
Brown. But again, it doesn't necessarily correlate to strength, but he's strong. He's weaker than Gandalf and Saruman, at least, and we don't know enough about the blue wizards, so he is the weakest that we see.
But he kind of just does his own thing, man. I gotta respect that.
He is the guardian of Greenwood, i.e. Mirkwood, which is where people know Bilbo traveled through.
Yeah. They
got captured. He was imprisoned in Greenwood by the elves. So that's your favorite character.
Is he in the Lord of the Rings book?
Radagast?
Yeah.
No.
But he is in The Hobbit.
No.
So he's added into The Hobbit. I thought he was added into The Hobbit. He's not in either of them. Is he Silmarillion vibes?
I mean, it's not just Silmarillion. I mean, yeah, it's Silmarillion. And Unfinished Tales and some
okay.
stuff.
That's sweet. Okay, yeah, so I feel like I have to say Radagast is my favorite. And so this next one's going to be boring. But, like, Aragorn's in my top 3.
Obviously.
He can't not...
And that goes to mine. Aragorn is my second favorite character.
Okay, hell yeah. So we agree on this one.
And I have to just give it to him because, when I started watching it, like, when I was younger, like, I wanted to be Aragorn. Like, before I read the books, before everything, I wanted to be. He was so cool. I wanted his sword. He looked sick. He was getting the girl. He had 2 girls.
Yeah.
Man was fighting over 2 baddies. The 2 baddies.
Elf girl and human girl.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, Arwen was my first celebrity crush.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that was my first crush,
wow.
I think. I mean, I can't
That's
really
sweet.
think of anyone else.
I think my first celebrity crush was Penny from The Big Bang Theory. Kaylee Cuoco.
Yeah, no, hey, that's fair as well. Yeah, I remember.
It quickly became Sofia Vergara.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, this guy's known me, by the way, since I was 6 years old.
6 years old.
Yeah. Okay, so let's circle back to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So, we've done number 1, we've done number 2. Do you want to do number 3 and then number 3?
So my number 3 is hard. There's a couple people.
Yeah, I'm struggling in my own head right now.
How about we just do 4? Can we just do 4? Top 4?
Sure, let's do 4.
Okay, that's perfect.
That really helps.
That really helps. Yeah. So my number 3 favorite character of all time is Fingolfin. So no one's gonna know who this person is, just because no one has read the Silmarillion except for me and this planet. Apparently. Okay. But Fingolfin is honestly, in my opinion, a contender for the definition of him. And I mean that like genuinely. Like I've never seen a character just be more like him. Fingolfin was the brother of the most important elf in Lord of the Rings history, Feanor.
Okay.
The creator of the Silmarils.
Okay.
Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Silmaril. He's the most important elf of all time.
Okay.
Feanor, when the Silmarils were stolen by Morgoth, i.e. the big bad guy of the Lord of the Rings universe. Right. Stronger than Sauron. He is Sauron's master. Before the Lord of the Rings, before the Second Age, the Third Age, in the first 2 ages of Middle-earth, Age 0, I guess, and the First Age, he was the big bad guy. Morgoth stole the Silmarils, which are Feanor's prized possessions. The most beautiful jewels you have ever seen. Some people believe the Arkenstone in The Hobbit is one of those Silmarils. To give you an example of how beautiful these jewels are.
Oh my god, the Arkenstone isn't in the book. I just remembered that. Okay.
No, it is.
I don't think it is.
There is. It may not be called the Arkenstone, but there is a jewel that Frodo steals.
Okay.
That Bilbo steals. Okay. I'm pretty sure.
Huh.
I mean, why else would he be? Was it really not in the...
I don't think
Am I just not remembering this?
Well, hold on, no, now we have to look it up.
Oh.
Sorry, folks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, this is on me. No, I'm sorry.
Was the Arkenstone...
It's been a while since The Hobbit. I'm sorry.
In the Hobbit book. Oh my god. It's just a fancy heirloom known as the Heart of the Mountain. Okay.
Yeah, see, and it says Jackson turns the Arkenstone into something that resembles a Silmaril.
Okay.
So, like I said, the Arkenstone in the movie Hobbit, the Arkenstone in the movie really resembles what a Silmaril is. It's, like, entrancing, like, mortals would probably be, like, Like
the One Ring.
Yeah, it's very similar. It was created from light from the 2 trees. If anyone's watched the Rings of Power... The first episode shows the 2 trees. They are the most brilliant things in...
Underrated show.
So they're very beautiful. Feanor travels after Morgoth because Morgoth steals them. He travels from Valinor to Middle-earth. Fingolfin's like, hey, bro, what the hell? You left me here. So he makes the journey. He crosses up north over the mountains. It's basically Hannibal crossing the Alps.
Okay.
But 10 times harder because it's a fantasy series. So imagine the mountains are just higher. So he crossed them. A lot of elves died. He made it to the Middle-earth only to find out that Feanor had already died by the hand of a bunch of Balrogs. He got jumped in the hood, basically. Basically, he went to Angband, which is the fortress of, Morgoth. And then a bunch of Balrogs just jumped out and surrounded him.
That's crazy.
He just got jumped and not beat to death.
Wow. By
the Lord of Balrogs, Gothmog. So Fingolfin gets really pissed.
Gothmog isn't the one in Lord of the Rings, is it?
So yeah, so they added that. Peter Jackson added Gothmog, the orc in Lord of the Rings, who's disfigured, etc., and hobbles around, because he hated Harvey Weinstein, who was the producer, and that resembles him, and he just needed to give him a name to the main orc. He also hated Harvey Weinstein. So hell yeah.
Go.
Gothmog in the books is the Lord of the Balrogs, the strongest Balrog. Morgoth's second deadliest servant behind Sauron.
Okay.
But Fingolfin, hearing this, gets really pissed off. He's his brother, so he rides to Angband, all right, and says, Morgoth, come out here, you little whiny little bitch. All right, fight me. And Morgoth comes out there and fights him. And they have a battle. I mean, this is an elf versus a god. And in the books, it is said that his eyes started glowing red, like a god. And he was, moving, faster than, basically, the eye could follow. Fingolfin. He was able to wound Morgoth in the foot, which made him have a permanent limp. And Morgoth never ventured outside again. after he fought Fingolfin.
Did he win?
No, Fingolfin died. But
okay.
he is fighting the most powerful being in Middle-earth, and he wounded him.
He wounded him.
So that's why I will say, that's why he is him.
Yeah.
All right?
No, I can get behind that.
So what is your third favorite?
Oh, boy. I mean, I've had someone in my head, but I'm just, like, I'm thinking through them. But, I mean, the Witch Kings are sweet. But, I think number 3 might have to go to Gimli. I just love Gimli. He's the best. He's a sweetie pie. And also, him and Legolas are so much fun in the movie. I didn't remember them being as funny as they were, but I just been rewatching them, and they're just such a good duo. So, but I like Gimli's personality more than Legolas's.
Interesting. Yeah. Gimli's and Legolas's friendship was like a big thing in the books. There's a reason like Gimli went to Valinor with Legolas.
Oh,
which is
sweet.
He is the only dwarf to ever set foot in Valinor because of his bond with Legolas. And that happens, if you guys remember, in the first movie when, they go to Lothlorien to see Galadriel. Mm-hmm. Gimli asks his gift is a lock, one strand of Galadriel's hair.
Right.
Because he had never seen something as beautiful. No jewels, as he said, no gem,
hair.
As her hair. And that is kind of when their friendship grows because, most of the time they're like, the classic dwarf versus elf. But here, Legolas sees, oh, look, he's appreciating, elven beauty, and they start to become more and more friends. And obviously, running 3 days straight together probably built some bond together,
That's sweet, actually. I remember that in the movies, and now I understand it better. And you also lead me into number 4, Galadriel. She's sick. I mean, she's awesome. And also Cate Blanchett's so cool.
Cate Blanchett was one of the best castings Lord of the Rings has done.
Yeah.
Like I think they casted everyone perfectly, but Cate Blanchett as Galadriel really nailed it.
That was another celebrity crush, by the way. Hela. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's my number 4.
Galadriel, fun fact, I would say is a top 3 strongest elf of all time.
Yeah.
She's one of the older ones. She's probably the oldest elf we see in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Maybe besides Thranduil, who is Legolas's father. We see in The Hobbit. He's the head of him and Galadriel are the 2 oldest that we see. They are from Valinor. They were born there. But she's really cool. But my 4th favorite character is Glorfindel, which...
Oh my god.
Which... Another perfect example as the definition of him. He's another elf.
God.
He was in the books. So, Arwen's role in the books of kind of like, she shows up and then like fights off, scares away the Nazgul, the ring wraiths. That never happens. I don't mind that they changed it.
I think it's sweet.
Because they give her some character development because she doesn't really have that much character development in the book. She's kind of just like Aragorn's, love interest that he can't be with, and it hurts his heart, and he has to choose between her and Éowyn. But this gives her actually like some purpose. Yeah. Which is nice. But that role, actually, Frodo walks himself to Rivendell on his own. No one actually rides along with him. But Injured, yeah. Wow, okay. But when he gets like by the river, it is Glorfindel who meets up with him, and the Nazgul see him, they just run away. All right. Really? I'm just saying, and that is because in the first stage of Lord of the Rings, all right. So with Morgoth, Glorfindel did something that only 2 other people have done. Mm-hmm. That's kill a Balrog. Okay. He was defending his party, so they were leaving. There's a city, the great elf city of Gondolin, was getting ransacked. And he was leading a party of elves, women, children, men, just a party of elves, out the mountains till a Balrog, an unnamed Balrog, appears. And he fights with the Balrog and plunges his sword into his chest and falls. They both die. But the Valar, seeing this, think he's so cool that they send him back. They bring the man back to life. They send him back. They think, oh my god, these people need him so much. Everything's been going to shit since he left.
I like that the Valar kind of pick sides. I like that they're like, no, that guy's a badass. Let's bring
Yeah.
back Gandalf.
Gandalf, Glorfindel, like, they were like, alright, these people are screwed if they don't have this guy. Sent him back.
Yeah.
Glorfindel basically became equivalent to one of the wizards in terms of, like, hierarchy.
Okay.
So he came back with Saruman. He was sent with Saruman and the Blue Wizards and Gandalf, etc. He was sent there.
But he's originally an elf.
He's an elf, yeah.
Okay.
He's fallen through an elf. But I'm saying, like, he kind of gained the respect. He wasn't...
Okay.
When he came back, he used to have, like, a part of, like, you know, he was, like, a prince of elves, right? He wasn't that anymore. He kind of just was Glorfindel.
Okay.
So, there were 2 instances where the Nazgul rule ran away from him. The first instance is when, you know, during the Second Age, when the Kingdom of Angmar was in the middle of destroying the Kingdom of Men Arnor, which is in the north, which was the sister kingdom of Gondor.
Okay.
Before it was destroyed by the Witch King of Angmar. The Witch King of Angmar was about to kill the last king of Arnor, and was laughing until Glorfindel started riding upon him, and immediately again just ran away. Okay, that's how strong he is.
Yeah.
So he's my 4th favorite character. I couldn't choose between him and Fingolfin. So I'm glad we chose the 4th spot.
You have a lot of elves on that list.
Yeah.
The elves are, I mean, they were one of the original races. They're supposedly supposed to be pretty sick.
I have 2 men and 2 elves.
Yeah. No women.
Well, unfortunately for us, Tolkien may or may not have been very sexist.
Yeah. Also probably pretty racist.
Oh my god. Have you noticed that there's no, you know, good blood... Anyone except for white person? Every single good guy in Lord of the Rings.
In Lord of the Rings?
In the Rings of Power, they casted an elf as, you know, the main elf is black, which he did actually probably my favorite part of that series. He's amazing, but in the books, everyone is described as white. They just go in very detail. They are fair skinned, which I guess you can take as anything. Fair skinned either meaning they have good skin or they are white skinned. They're white, so it's hard to, you know, it's hard. But
no, don't make me hate my goat Tolkien.
No, but like it's I think, you know, I like to think that this is based more on World War One. In terms of
it also is the history of Europe, and Europe
is very white. Yes, white. And there are other races that it's just a very shame that the one you know, colored race is a bad guy. Yeah. The only one we see is the enemy.
Yeah, I couldn't help but notice that.
Yeah, it's bad.
I was watching it, and then the elephants came out, and I was like, oh man.
Yeah, no, it's bad when you see it. I mean, like, yeah, if you ignore that, it's a perfect story. If you ignore that part,
it's perfect. All right, man. Well, the last episode ended with the entire table falling over, and it just crashed everywhere. So, but this one was perfect. So,
yeah.
Thank you for joining me on.
Do you want to break some stuff? You want to signify? I can just chuck this PC.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna shake your hand.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And that's it. Mwah.
Mwah.